So Motilal, you'll be hosting, right? And
Yes. When you elected, you had to serve.
RT's supposed to be doing
Interview, yes.
the interview.
I don't know if Vish could give you a call.
Yes. So we are currently live on YouTube.
Mhm.
So
I will have to come and see you probably in the a little busy now, but sometime in the first week of July. I have two books I want to put on Amazon, so I'll
I'm
come
here.
and see you first week in July.
Lovely, lovely. I'm here for you, Modi.
Yes, yes, yes. But I have a series of things line up, and then I'm going for vacation in June. So when I
Ah,
come back, RT is here,
where are you going?
Canada,
Oh, lovely.
and then in August, sorry, and in July, my son and my grandchildren and my daughter-in-law here in July.
Oh
So I
my
have
God.
a real tight schedule.
I bet. Where in Canada are you going?
Toronto.
Ah, yeah. You should try sometime to go over to Victoria in on the other side of Canada on Vancouver Island because that is absolutely magnificent over there.
I think
Vancouver Island and Victoria, British Columbia, gorgeous
it
place.
was Savi daughter, she hosting us and she have a schedule. So I go in with the schedule. Hi RT. Let me see you girl. I only seen you there, but I seen your video. So, no, let me see this. RT, Kamtani, Gusha, Haro, Vishnu. Right. Vishnu, how are you doing, boy?
Okay, I'm good. All
I
right.
see. I just see a little picture. The reading. Yes, I couldn't make it yesterday, but
Yeah, it was all right.
I
It
don't
was
know.
good.
I was out all morning and now back on the computer.
It was a good show. Wasn't bad.
Okay, okay. Yeah, well.
Ron, I can't get my
Any-
camera
ask
again.
Ron.
Oh, Lord.
Wish. According to this here, let me see here. Camera on. Let me see. RT can this question. Gusha, if you hear me, see if you could help get headers and RT
Oh,
camera on.
Heather
It's
sounded like
okay.
she had her own personal IT guy there.
Yeah, Ron's going to try to do it.
Okay.
You can see it over RT. See if you
Go
get
ahead,
RT's camera too.
RT,
I
don't know which. Just give me a minute.
RT's on her
Let me see
phone, so we can hear her.
Okay, I think I got through.
Hi, RT.
Okay,
How are
RT
you?
is on,
Hi.
yes.
Yes. Okay, that should do it. Let me fiddle around a little bit to know when to mute and if I can do that, yeah?
Okay.
Yes, RT, you're going good. I like that hairdo, girl. all you,
Yes,
all you
boy.
missing there is the Urni for
Ye-
Indian Heritage Month.
Now, don't worry, boy. I
Okay,
have
Hera, you're
your,
back. Hera, you're on.
I've got my.
Yes,
Okay,
Hera,
Gersha, you're
ask
going
her
to have
something.
to unmute me and so on, because I'm not being able to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
it.
Okay, so
Hera,
okay,
there's
so
this guy here on vacation, one of my good friend,
Uh-huh.
Daniel Ramnarayan, and his wife name is Baby. They say they know you well, and Baby says she's be with Margaret.
Oh, okay. Right.
Hera, you hear me?
well, it wasn't baby Sunny Boy sister?
No, this is a girl from Mahesh Road. She said that she's be helping out Margaret there, and her husband name is Daniel Ramnarayan.
Okay, I will write down Kelvin's sister would know who that is.
Yes, they said they know you used to be by Margaret. I think maybe she's work with Margaret or something. I think there.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I always well, Margaret used to babysit me like in that 8 cent story. I was always at her house.
No, we're talking about in Canada. They migrated in around 1970.
Okay.
A thin
Okay.
dark
Yeah.
guy.
Well, then Kelvin's sister would know who that is. Yeah, because she used to go there all the time in Kingston.
All right.
Well, we have 10 minutes yet. 10 minutes to airtime.
Motilal, if you go to your video, are you able to go to your video settings?
Well, you see, you putting me in trouble now, you know. Video
Sorry.
setting, let me see, Motilal. All I know when ready, let me see, let me see if I could just do a
When
little
you go
thing to
right next to
record.
start video, do you see an
One
upside
more.
down V?
I could record on this computer. Let me see. Right. So it
Okay,
was
lovely. So you'll just send us the recording then.
right. So let me take off recording for now. So when you're ready, I go record. I see
Oh, okay,
most
no
I
problem.
could do. Use our IT person.
Artie, are you familiar with Zoom on the interactive rooms?
NFRT,
Yes,
Okay.
I'm hearing. Yes.
Are you familiar with Zooms and the interactive rooms?
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
I'm not. I'm
Okay,
not.
okay, no problem.
Gusha, you had to stick around and
Well, I'm doing it from my phone, so I can't get to the interactive rooms. So what we may ask everyone to do is turn off their cameras except Heather and RT. So then that way they will get picked up solely for their
okay. Yeah,
interview.
well, normally we would just ask everybody to turn off their thing and
Yeah, just Heather and RT will have on their cameras, so they would be picked up.
okay.
Where's
I'm
Krishna
not
today?
seen Alisa. I'm not seeing this girl over Sherry. You talked to Sherry recently?
I spoke to Sherry this morning, so she should be coming on soon.
And I think
Sherry
Frank is
Vilma?
supposed to come.
What about Krishna?
I'll send Krishna a message.
Okay, I'll
Yes,
go and call Vilma now. I'll call Vilma.
Vishnu, very impressive presentation at NCIC with you and Krishna.
Yeah.
It was okay.
Yes. No, it was very good, man. Very, very impressive.
No. I mean, I film afterward, but I know we were the hectic, and I think it was okay. I think
Yeah.
people good audience.
Yeah, Vilma, you're coming in. I see schedule to read today. All right. So I see you yet now. So let me Yeah, Hill. Okay, I'm looking forward. Thanks.
Cynthia is here. Hi, Cynthia.
Hi,
I
Archie.
see.
Yes, good to see you.
Good to
It's
see
so
you
long.
too. But I see all you on Facebook.
Yes. My Sundays are
Vilma
the
should
most
be.
noisy day of the week. I have to quiet it down a bit.
Okay, Frank is here. All right.
Hi.
Hi, Frank. I
Hi,
just sent you
Fran.
a message. You can ignore it. Okay, so I sent everyone messages.
Yeah, okay. Well,
we-
Vilma will be joining us in a minute or so.
Are we supposed to sing happy birthday to Gersha or what?
Oh, we forget that, y'all.
I'm not singing
that's
happy birthday until I get the cake.
That is why you're
Until
out.
I see the cake.
That is why you're going out today. Is a birthday.
I have some.
Gersha, is
have
it
some ramen.
Gersha's birthday?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
in.
Oh, well, happy birthday. My goodness.
Thank you.
May you have many, many more. Lovely.
Thank you.
I have.
So you have become 16 now, yeah?
Yes, 26. Forever 26.
I was just gonna ask you how old you are, Gil, but I didn't want to embarrass you in front of everybody.
I think most of us are over a lot of years.
Yeah, she's the baby of the group.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. No, I don't know.
Well,
I
I
don't
learned
know the title.
a long time ago, never ever ask a woman her age.
I have the rum and scotch and so on up here, you know. It's
Oh boy.
Well, I love to ask the age because I think the age tells a lot of things, you know, it gives you a starting point. So you kind of access what life has given, you know. I don't mind telling age and talking about age. It's a
yeah.
privilege to be alive, you know, it's a privilege to be alive at this age.
I put a piece on Facebook about when you get older, you know, you're always the same age deep down inside of you, just the outside.
Oh yes, oh yes.
Older.
We have heard that said from so many people in different ways, yeah? That
Yeah.
you know the flesh is willing, but the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. You know,
Yeah.
those kind of thing. You feel you could climb the mountains and you feel you can do all these things. But it is
Well,
only the spirit
especially
that can do it.
especially the knees.
Oh, well, I'll tell you this story about the knees. I am on the knees with my grandson who is learning to crawl. So all over the house, my knees are getting the pressure. I run behind him, you know.
Oh, Lord, yes.
Well, Archie, you're still good, Gil, if you could get down on the floor and get up again. If I get down on the floor, I ain't getting up.
Heather,
Yes,
you ought to
yes.
get a
Okay, so that was
pirha.
there too.
I do some woodworking on the side. I've made piras for a lot of people here from
You ought to
Trinidad.
get a pirha, girl.
Oh, Frank, oh, I love my pirha, boy. I just want it for my garden. I sit
Oh,
down
yeah.
with my pirha in the garden and I have a, you know, this shovel that they do the concrete work with.
Yes.
It's
Yeah,
perfect tool for somebody like me. So I can do under the, you know, the plants
Yeah.
and so on. Yeah, but I'm not doing gardening so much anymore.
Okay, well, we nearing 1 o'clock, so we asking everybody to mute and so that we I think Heather, because if we mute and take out the camera so that when the people talking they would come on. So except for RT and Heather, we'd ask everybody to mute and take off the camera, and we're going to start in a few seconds. Okay, somebody, let me see, there is Vishnu within room, all right. Okay, no, it's not there. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Poetry and Prose. Today we are featuring Hera Laltu Ferguson and her new book, Circe's Dance. And to tell us more and learn more about Hera and the book, we would be asking RT Janki to interview Hera, and we learn more about Hera and the book. Take it away, RT and Hera.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ed, thank you all for having me again here. And Heather, congratulations on the new book. We begin. When an author sits down to write, everything they know is used to tell the story. That's why we say, in order to know an author, we need to read what they have written. Facets of their personality, the way they think, their morals and values, can be found between the lines. A little more than 2 years ago, author Motilal Budu Singh invited me to join Poetry and Prose. It was there I met today's author of the month, Heather Laltu Ferguson. Our conversations were the surface of a friendship that blossoms into a soul sister relationship when we began reading each other. Heather is an accomplished writer with several books that makes her a biographer, historian, novelist, poet, and artist. One thing stands out clearly. It is her art, a refined style of writing in the telling of stories. Poetry and Prose welcomes Heather as its author of the month, May 2024. It is my pleasure to chat with this author whose recently published book titled Circe's Dance and Other Stories is now available on Amazon. Heather, I am sure all of us are excited to hear about the making of Circe's Circle. We have gotten to know you a little bit, and we have seen your art that is amazing art in what you do with your hands and the way you style your garden and your living room and so on. Each area of your art, of your life, you have put the art. So, what is the process of getting this particular book on the market?
Well, it was a long process. I had 20 years as a journalist within a newspaper, and of course, writing became second nature. So that when I retired, I continued writing. I started to write and record stories from my homeland because I'm living in the diaspora, and I wanted to give my children a clear vision of where we had come from. But unfortunately, they're not ready to accept that yet. They're very forward looking and they were born in this country and this is their home. I've come to realize that now. And maybe in the future, they will look backwards the way I am, but they're not ready yet. But that didn't stop me in joining the Poetry and Prose group, especially. It's brought me full circle back to my homeland and to people like you, Motilal, and the rest of the membership. And I feel like it is a second home to me, and because it's brought me back in touch with my roots. um but when I started to write, I didn't have that support as yet, so writing was a way of um I suppose defining my identity as a non-Canadian living in Canada, as a person in the diaspora. So that is really what got me on the course of writing my own personal stories.
Right. But in the particular one, Circe's Circle, tell us a little more about it, how this collection forms into your mind to make it into a cohesive collection.
Well, in the novella Circe's Dance, especially, I began with the little folklore aspect of, I mentioned the Suklaya, the La Diablesse. I got into the local um folklore a bit, but then I drew it into modern times in that the Circe utters a curse on a certain fisherman in the village that she lives in, and that is thread that weaves itself through the entire story, right to the end, we can see how her curse has made itself known in the lives of the two main characters of the book. The girl that, and actually, the twin characters, Lali and Nyla, came about. They're almost like a split of my own personality, because I always used to wonder what would I have become if I had stayed in Trinidad. So one girl represents the person I might have been if I had stayed in Trinidad, and the other girl represents the girl that left Trinidad and came away. So that really is the whole gist behind the whole novella.
And when you are writing the story, because it has been such a long time ago, how do you manage to recollect, in 8 cents in this book, the story? You have been able to pick up these pieces. Does it mean that you kept notes written somewhere about certain things?
Not really, because 8 Cents actually is a true story. It really happened in Pinal. So most of it is based in fact, and other parts of it come from, for example, when the publisher said to me, "Oh, you've got to make the story more exciting." Then I brought in every snake story from the Mulchansing part of my family. This, the 8 Cents is taking place in Pinal among my Laltu relatives. But then when he said, "Well, you've got to jazz it up a little bit," then I brought in every single snake story from the Mulchansing part of my family. So I added, it's all true stuff, but it's all been added in a patchwork. And yeah, so those are just things in my head. I didn't really make any notes of them.
Yeah, so this is the first time you're working with an editor. How was it different from the other books that you have done? And do you think that you could take this, the fact that you have an editor is like when you have a mentor or somebody in the back of you. What kind of strength does that give you as a writer to write more in the future?
Well, the editor actually kind of put me through the ringer because he was not pleased with a lot of what I had. He wanted more action, more drama, which is why he asked me to bring in more elements into the story, which was a challenge. But on the other hand, it made me delve deeper into myself and into my creativity to come up with things. The only thing is working with an editor, I don't have the flow that I normally have when I do my own stories, because he made me change so much, or he himself changed things and not in a sequence that was necessarily what I would have done. But it's an education, it's a learning experience, and I was grateful for that.
Yes, I think that is very important because they are seeing it from how to sell that book to other readers, and
Right.
what you want most of all is to have a readership. So from that point of view, an editor must be. I have never worked with an editor. I've worked with mentors, but I haven't worked with an editor.
Well,
Yeah.
you really have to put your ego aside, because he will make you feel sometimes that you're not adequate. And and actually after 20 years of writing for the newspaper, where none of my stuff was ever edited, it was just printed as
Yes.
I gave it to them. Um, it could be really hurtful to your ego to think, well, gee, he's making me change this. He doesn't like this. Maybe I'm not a good writer. He's teaching me how to write. So I really had to at times put my ego on. Actually, Frank Mohan has the same publisher. And Frank said something very interesting once. He said, I had to put my ego aside. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do that too, just to see it to the end. I just didn't want to abandon it halfway through. Um, and I think sometimes you can tell the difference when a teacher is trying to teach you something for your own good rather than just make you feel badly about who
Oh,
you are. Yeah.
okay, so it could be very well the personality more than the what he was telling you to do. Does it also mean that you write spontaneously? How do you write? Will you sit down and write 8 cents, or do you structure that story before you write it?
Yes, I always do. Sometimes I might be sitting there looking like I'm daydreaming, but I'm working in my head. So by the time I come to write something down, it will just write itself almost. So a lot of the writing process takes place in your mind while you're doing other things or while you're doing nothing. So
well, I find myself picking up more and more pieces, you know. It's like I think you share the same with me. It's like you throw food for the pigeons, and you go, like food that is thrown for the pigeons, you pick up the bit by bit by bit, and you have it assembled in front of you, and that is what you're working with. So it's like picking up everything that happened in Trinidad, and you don't want to let go of any of it. So does it mean to say you have started this part of your writing and there's more to come?
hope so. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes I go through the dry spells where I think, well, you know, I've got writer's block. I realize that. I try not to panic, and I just try to go with the flow.
Well,
Yeah.
well, luckily this forum has quite a lot of writers of our own age group, and that too can help, because the dry up, that is a thing that go through the dry spell. That is a thing that happens to all of us. Sometimes for 10 days I can't write, and then just like that. So sometimes the experimentation in the writing, the poetry, and you know, you write it in different ways, and suddenly it opens up. It opens up because you know, you can't stop churning it in your head. Once you stop doing that, the writing dries, and then when
Yes.
you get back into it as well, right? So yeah. Okay, so is this book going to come to Trinidad, and how are you going to get it down to its place on the bookshelves?
I don't know that yet. I don't know really how to go about it, because I'm kind of isolated on the East Coast. I'm not among other very
Yes.
many other Trinidadians. Yeah. But I did mail some to Gershia and to Motilal, and that they were able to be dispersed. But
Yeah.
and it's in the DB library. But as far as the bookshelves, I'm not sure yet how to go about that. I'll probably need a contact person.
I think because we are in this forum, and there are quite a few of us and as authors living abroad or wherever, books are, even Harold's books are overseas, and so I think we need to have one agent or one bookstore that sells all the books, because it's heartbreaking to know that all these books are written and it's outside there, but it isn't in place. And this is what we have to leave for the future generations. I'm sure you agree with me. So perhaps we could start thinking about getting RIK or one of them to get our books inside, to get, you know, in their bookshop, and not only to have it in the back of their bookshops, but to have it prominently displayed so that we could attract the readership. I don't know if you've had the experience, but I have had the experience in Trinidad where people think if you're an author, oh my God, we have authors in Trinidad, you actually write a book, and they'll take the book and look at the book because their whole being tells them that writers come from England and different places, and they are a breed that, you know, don't interact with people. So it's like to become a part of your book and to tell the stories and to inspire the younger generation, I think. But that is the job that we are, as a group of writers, and we are in a position that we have come together, you know, we have come together with the same problem of how even the local writers like Vishnu and Krishna and them, how you put your book into the market and get it to stay in focus. Because I think that's not being done right now. Now we have a panel of with seasoned writers, and I'd like to open the floor if anybody wants to ask Heather any particular question, that we could talk some more about it. Or Heather, do you want to say anything more about what we are talking about?
I think that the idea of getting an agent in Trinidad who can help us to get the books on shelves is a good idea, and maybe that's something we can talk about within our group at some time.
Yes.
If I can find a way of getting, for example, Motilal's coming to Canada next month, so I can make sure that he can get a bunch of books to take back.
A certain amount, yes.
Yeah, but then he has the burden of trying to get it to a bookstore, so I'm not sure he wants to take that on or what, we'll have to go from there. Yeah.
Okay.
Because mailing things can be problematic as well. Not only
Okay.
does it take a long time, but sometimes the mail just doesn't get through.
Right. So Circe's Circle is a collection of how many stories? Can you tell us about that as we go into
It's
reading? Yeah.
well, Circe's Dance itself is a novella of 4 parts, and then you've got 3 short stories that go with it. There's 8 cents, there's the bracelets in 2 parts, and then there is Symmetry and Destiny, which is the only one that's completely nonfiction. But it is a strange coincidence because really what it turns out to be is that the house that when we immigrated to Canada, the house we rented, it turned out that the person that lived in that house had painted a certain picture. And in researching the painting, we found out that he had gone to Trinidad and ended his days there almost 70 years before we came. We crossed paths, in other words, without ever meeting each other. We came to his house, he came to Port of Spain, and his family was instrumental in building the Victoria Art Institute right across from Holy Name Convent. So yeah, so it's a little slice of Trinidad history along with the history of the family. And it's just a strange coincidence to think we landed up in his house.
Yes, I have read the book and it's such a treasure. I have lent it out to be read again, because that's what we do with books. Once you are impressed by the writing, you pass it on to others to read as well. I enjoy all the stories in it, and it is something that you would want to read again and again. And I think it will be a crying shame if people in Trinidad did not get access to it, especially the school libraries and the public libraries and the bookshops should have these books. So we have 8 cents that it paints the picture of the village scenes, the rum shop, which played a prominent part in our yesterdays, and things that happened that is so vivid, so vivid. You brought it to the top, so vivid, and it happened all in the 50s, 60s. And then from there, we go into Circe's Circle. And the other one is the bracelets, which we heard a little bit about. And all of these coincidences that we can all relate to, that how things fit like a puzzle in our lives as we go older. So I leave the floor to you to get into Motilal's reading.
Okay. Well, I really chose selections from the book in a chronological way. So we are going to start with 8 cents. But getting on to when we enter the Circe's Dance novella itself, I did want to say, and I requested that Cynthia in particular read from my description of the school that I went to in Port of Spain, Bishop Anstey High School. And one of my classmates is here, Helen Watley Ames. Pleased to see her. Yeah, that was a definitive time in my life because I went to that school from kindergarten to Form 5. So that's a 10-year stretch at the same school. And that was such a wonderful place in my mind as a child. My whole growing up took place at that school. So woven into all of these stories, even into the fictitious parts, are the things that made me who I am. So we will begin, I guess, with Mr. Motilal reading from 8 cents, the first story in the book. And of course, I come from Pinal, and this is set in Pinal.
One thing about two things I want to say that well, this is a copy of the book. I have my copy here, and there is a copy in the Davie Library. On Friday, I was at the Diwali Nagar to do the launch for using a tea shop, and I was in conversation with a guy from Nallis. He was there. He was taking pictures and all that, and I know I could contact him again because he knows Vishnu very well. So I'll follow up that way. But what he said to me is that all books, all the local authors, their books are supposed to be in the Nallis Library in Port of Spain at the headquarters. They would find some way to acquire them and all that. So I might be working on that with Vishnu and getting in contact with this guy. Also, before I read my story, just want to say something, When I was doing the launch, I was doing the little talk at the Diwali Nagar. There's a part that Krishna wrote, He says that he was talking about the writers from the diaspora. And he was talking about Frank, he was talking about RT, and he was talking about Hedda and Altia. And what he says that the way they write, it seems as if their heart has never left Trinidad. So I just want to put that in. And I want to say too, then, in reading Circe's Dance, and I was able to recognize quite a few of the characters, although had I say Mrs. Flat, I know who she meant. Okay, so today I will be reading 8 Cents and the Snake, Part 1. 8 Cents was a beggar in the village of Pinal, where I grew up in the 1950s. He attached himself to the village shop owned by Mr. Gones, affectionately known to all as Grandpa. The shop was located across the main road from my auntie's Margaret house and was a large building divided into a general store and a rum shop which served alcoholic drinks. At any given hour of the day, men were found at the bar in the rum shop partaking of drink, becoming increasingly raucous as the day advanced into closing time. Here, 8 cents begged for the usual British 8-cent silver coin from every person he met. That was the cause of a shot of rum in those days when Trinidad was still a colonial outpost where the British currency was widely used. Thanks to the generosity of strangers, 8 cents made enough money in a day to keep him in a state of bliss for most of his life. No one knew his real name, but given Trinidad penchant for both nicknames and irony, the moniker 8 cents was a title bequeathed to him by the local populace. A boast of epic proportions, 8 cents regaled fellow drinkers on a regular basis with fantastic tales of his bravery and skill in combating the onslaught of life that would make other men quail in fear. I ever tell you how in my younger days I was a champion stick fighter? 8 cents announced to the men in the rum shop he frequented. Yes, I even defeated the island champ Benoit Mulchansing in Freeport Junction, where he lived. I parry and I spar with him the whole length of Mission Road until he gave up by the junction in front of the police station. 8 cents said, his face beaming with pride. Man, you tell us that story already, one of the rum shop patrons retorted. I'm tired hearing about it. Such protests never stopped 8 cents, who continued. What about the day I chased a whole pack of wild dogs on the verge of attacking a small girl on the way to school, still eating her breakfast roti? We hear that one too, man, another patron remarked. In fact, I hear that so many times. I know the story by heart now. I could write a book about it. I ever tell you about how much money I have in the bank in San Fernando? Was 8 cents next claim? Every day when you're begging for 8 cents for a shot, I know. You promised to pay back on someday, another man said. No one believed 8 cents had money any more than they believed his exploits. But these protestations never quelled 8 cents' enthusiasm for his own narrative. He was a hero in his own eyes. There was no task he could not accomplish in his own mind. Now, Grandpa's shop was the equivalent to today's all-purpose convenience corner store. Its fare consisted of everything from squares of blue soap for bathing and washing clothes to staples such as local produce, blocks of ice, tins of salted butter, tin sardines, coarse flour in white cloth sacks, brown sugar in burlap bags, salted crackers, coffee and tea and matches, ropes, nails and screws, brass knives and cutlasses, plus a myriad of household necessities needed by the local inhabitants, who did not want to venture south to the shops in Pinal Junction or north to those in San Fernando, which was some distance away and required a taxi ride at an additional cost. The shop was a busy meeting place for locals of all walks of life. Mr. Apple, a slim and wiry black carpenter with his businesslike demeanor, breezed through in most mornings with his list in his hands. Always in a hurry, he demanded of Grandpa, "Give me a pint of 2-inch nail, 6 1-inch screw, and a coil of paper hanging wire. I'm building a shack by the Laltu property and I need a few finishing items," he added as an afterthought. "And I will take a bun with cheese and a sweet drink for later." Next, a slight Indian woman, Madame Flat, would saunter in, her thin face covered by the sheer Indian veil known as an urni. "I want half pound of butter and some sugar and a bag of flour for them sweet buns I'm making. And give me the change in coins, please. You know, I don't think them paper money is real." On the counter of the shop, rows of clear glass jars held candies of every kind, sugar-encrusted jubjubs, hard-boiled sweeties, sugar case, licorice, as well as salty tambourine balls, salt prunes, red mango, all lined up awaiting the hordes of school children who descended on the shop from the nearby Pinal Government School during lunch hour. "Mr. Shopkeeper, give me 2 tambourine balls there and 3 jubjub," one childish voice would exclaim, followed by a sea of demands as the children crowded in. The shop was also frequented by housewives, gathering daily to purchase much needed items, as well as catching up on the latest gossip in the village. Very often they would be accompanied by a child or two who would become privy to all the salacious going on in the community, as well as be exposed to the drunken men in the bar area adjoining the main shop. "Auntie Gloria, I see Kendrick going by Glenda House late last night." One woman began the gossip of a local man and the village prostitute, "And he's a married man to both." "Yes, girl, if he not careful, everybody going to know their business. And you know Glenda don't care. Her reputation already in the gutter." So the latest news made the rounds at the shop daily. Once my cousin and I overheard such an exchange. "Auntie, who is a prostitute?" I asked in all innocence. "Where did you hear that?" she said. "By Grandpa's shop. We heard one of the ladies saying Gloria is a prostitute." Have a good mind not to lay or you go over there anymore. That is how gossip starts, by repeating things you hear in the shop. Later that afternoon, we heard Auntie Margaret telling Uncle Sonny Boy's sister-in-law, who lived next door, exactly what we told her. Jacqueline said, "But Auntie doing exactly what she told us not to do. She repeating the things we heard in the shop, and now she's spreading gossip." That is what all adults do all the time. It is do as I say and not what I do with them. They're so hypocritical, I said. After that, we kept our observations to ourselves so we could continue going to the shop for treats. Very often, Jacqueline and I, sitting on burlap bags filled with hard corn kernels for sale as chicken feed, overheard gossip we did not understand until years later, when a clearer comprehension of the ways of the world became more apparent to us. We enjoyed the busy atmosphere of the shop, though, reveled in exotic smells like fresh citrus blended with spices and curry powder and cinnamon. And we entertained ourselves looking at some of the interesting labels on the box and bags of goods for sale. There were round wooden boxes of cheddar cheese and tins of salty butter from England, slim bottles of olive oil from Italy, cooking sherry from France, and Brunswick sardines from Canada. We thrive in the din of the environment, listening to reports of the latest gossip in the village and to 8 cents wild tales. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
Motilal. Thank you. That brings me now right back to me.
It's quite a gem, quite a gem. I loved it.
And it bring back the shop right back to me too, because I live not too far from Grandpa's shop, and as I say, I could recognize quite a few people in the story here. Our next reader is Krishna Samaru. I'm not seeing Krishna here, so maybe we could just move along. Krishna, you're not here? Okay, we could move along and we'd ask Vishnu Gosain, who would read Circe's Dance, Part 1. Vishnu, floor is yours.
Vishnu is muted. Vishnu has to unmute.
You know?
Yes, yes. Yes,
Vishnu, you
Vish,
need
go
to
ahead.
unmute.
No?
No, you're good. You're good. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm reading part 1 of part 4, Circe's Dance. Lali and Nyla sat on the floor wall. Lali and Nyla sat on a low wall separating the yard from the beach, each lost in their own thoughts, content in the comfort of a silent, easy understanding enveloping them. Nyla was a dreamer and a philosopher. She thought of sailing ships and kings. She wondered what worlds lay beyond the horizon of the azure waters sparkling on the endless expanse of ocean stretching out before her. Lali was the practical one. She gazed at the green coconut palm trees above and visualized neat heaps of sugar cakes crowded onto an enamel plate in the center of the kitchen table. And Nyla broke the silence. You think it have any people like we on the other planets up in the sky? And Lali replied, girl, you don't think it have enough people right here on Earth? Why are you bothering with your head and all that? A gentle breeze played with the girl's long hair. Their bare feet dug into the water, into the warm white sand. Light reflected on the beach, on the ocean, retreated at low tide. The day was heavenly. Time seemed to have stopped, and the light in the sky wove its own magic spell of trickery, so the girls could not at once tell what time of day it was. It could be morning or late afternoon. Senses merged like the sea spray, infusing the air with its sweet moisture. So they sat, these two girls, lost in the river until at a shrill cry with an unmistakable Caribbean lilt rent the air. Lali, Nyla, food on the table now, come and eat. Lali and Nyla knew each other from infancy. Before their births, their mothers' huge bellies bumped up against each other in the small communal kitchen adjoining their living quarters in the crowded community of lean-tos on the beach at Mayaro. Their mothers often walked barefoot along the village roads to and from the local standpipe or back and forth from the local Canadian mission school, where each had received a rudimentary education. Their fathers were boys, really, when they left their own homes to forge a life for themselves. shackled to work in the local coconut estates lining the coastal road along the east coast of Trinidad. Born into a hard scramble life, Lali and Nyla made their worldly appearance, their plaintive wails rising with the tropical breeze blowing over the sea at Mayaru. Lali and Nyla had a happy childhood, running carefree through the coconut palms, canopies tilted towards the sea. They caught small red crab, fished for guppies in the streams, emptying the effluent into the ocean, dug for chip on the beach, and spent hours in the salt water, emerging only to eat and sleep. The girls grew to know nature in all its myriad incarnations. The mighty pull of the waves, the endless drone of the breakers pounding on the beach, and the red sun on the horizon each morning. Lali and Nyla also attended the local mission school in the village, where the principal was Mr. Sadafal. They shared a tattered Blackie's tropical reader, filled with a cornucopia of knowledge ranging from tales of the imagination to practical information from nature. Nyla loved stories of heroes and heroines told in rhymes and poems such as The Lady of Shalott and The Bingen on the Rhine. And Lali loved lessons on the cross-section of the seed or parts of a flower or insect. Nyla excelled at school. She absorbed knowledge voraciously. Lali enjoyed lessons with a hands-on approach, being a doer, not a dreamer like Nyla. In spite of this drastic character difference, the girls got on famously. They were the perfect complement to each other's personality. Nyla saw things the way might be, but Lali provided the down-to-earth, practical life lessons of the way things were. Although their families were poor, theirs was a life in paradise. One day, as Nyla entered a humble home, she heard her mother, Sita, softly crying. Her father, Ram, had come home from work tired, emotionally spent, and without a job. He was among a group of men let go from the coconut estate, and he was devastated. Oh God, girl, what we could do. For the first time in her young life, Nyla's world was rocked with uncertainty, and she saw the comfort of Lali, the two huddling against the low seawall. Day after day, Ram went looking for work, returning to his small dwelling, defeated and dejected. His campaign to find a new job became an obsession by necessity. However, he was one of the few men of his lowly status in life to have learned to read and write. So he went to a local lawyer from whom he had done some yard work to enlist her help. Dr. Laura, he said, I lose my job at the estate. You could recommend me to any of your acquaintances, he implored, using the biggest words he knew, befitting a conversation with a lady lawyer recently back from England, where she had earned a PhD in law. The only person on the island to enjoy that singular accomplishment. Dr. Laura was in urgent need of a law clerk. She thought a while. He can read and write. I could train him myself in the rudiments of law. After all, I just need a note taker for now. She hired him on the spot and had to kick in for a suit and tie too, so he could at least look the part of a law clerk in court. By week's end, Ram was earning 3 times as much as he had at the coconut estate, and living once again took on its blush. Life for Lali and Nyla continued. For Nyla, this hiccup along the way was born, soon forgotten. Ram's increased income did not change his standard of living, however, as he did not need outward acknowledgement of wealth. He reveled in family life, in his little hovel with all his homey familiarity, and stood in awe of the beach with its constant changeability, He banked his money. He was determined to educate his only child to ensure her protection from a life of hardship he had known on the coconut estate. He dreamed of Naila being an independent woman like Dr. Laura. Life in the village moved on with a slow day-to-day pace of routine. Yet the years flew by with speed. Time, like a shifting charlatan, presented itself with slow and quick at times, depending on circumstances. The year had finally come for Lali and Naila to leave elementary school. Naila had won a scholarship to the high school of her choice and anywhere on the island. And Lali had won all and cookery. Both girls were the pride of the school and a principal, Sadafal. Naila looked over the brochures from several high schools on the island, sent to her local school to recruit students to their establishments. She discussed the merits of each with her parents, eventually choosing Bishop Ansi High School in Port of Spain because of its colorful history. While elementary school was free of charge, high school was expensive. There were additional fees despite the scholarship, as well as uniforms and books to consider, and of course, transportation. Since there was no high school in the village, for Naila, her father's prudence paid off. For Lali, there was no money. Here began the first rift in the girls' fortunes that would end the perfect childhood in the perfect place. Thank you. That's
Thank
my
you
piece.
so much, Vishnu. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishnu. That was a lovely read, and we look forward to the continuing saga of Naila and Lali, is it? So our next reader is Miss Cynthia Murrell Birch, and I know that Hera especially asked Cynthia to read this next piece, and also because Cynthia was an English teacher at Bishop's, I think. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have Miss Cynthia M. Birch, who would be reading Circe's Dance Part 2. Take it away, Cynthia.
Thank you very much, Motilal. Circe's Dance, Part 2 of 4. In Port of Spain, Naila began to feel comfortable in her new surroundings. She loved school. It had opened up new worlds to her, and it was quickly becoming her second home. She grew to love its buildings, their distinctive archways open to the elements, the gardens, their huge trees majestic in the gentle air, and of course the carnival atmosphere, a microcosm of Trinidad itself. Naila relished the daily routine of everyday lessons, and increasingly she became a member of an expanding group of friends she could spend the breaks with. She now had a sense of belonging she had not felt since she left Lali back at the village. Naila relaxed at the boarding house too, quickly becoming a member of the family, invited on numerous occasions to accompany Mrs. Rohan, visiting relatives on excursions in and around the city. It all began on the first Saturday of Naila's stay at Mrs. Rohan's house. Naila, my sister and I going to the market down Charlotte Street. Come with us, you will enjoy the hustle and bustle, I'm sure. After we will go for lunch by the Ming Gardens Chinese restaurant, said Mrs. Rohan. Oh, that would be nice, said Naila, a bright smile lighting up her face. From then on, often on weekends, Mrs. Rohan would say, Naila, I'm going down Frederick Street. You want to come too? Or girl, we go in Emperor Valley Zoo. Come with us, girl. In this way, Naila got to know Port of Spain. She often accompanied Mrs. Rohan's visiting relatives from south on walks around the savannah on Saturday afternoons, buying bananas or doubles from vendors and taking in the city sights, a cricket match on the green, racehorses exercising near the racecourse, or family photo sessions in the botanical gardens. Sometimes on Sundays, there would be an outdoor concert in Victoria Park, a movie at Roxy Cinema, or cricket at the Oval. Naila made purchases of little trinkets from street sellers on Marine Square and sang along at hymn sing at Greyfriars Church with Mrs. Rohan and her companions. When American aircraft carriers sailed into Port of Spain harbor, Mrs. Rohan and her family took her to see the ships and even got a chance to tour one open to the public. Naila also experienced another island beach with visits to Maracas on the north coast, cooler, more cultivated, yet with its unmistakable beauty. It was only here she felt a distant pang of longing for home. At night, Naila lay in bed and listened to the faraway hum of traffic round the savannah, blended with the sweet sounds of a steel band in a nearby panyard. How different were these city sounds from the constant buzzing and chirping of nocturnal creatures, adding an intricate melody to the constant backbeat of the ocean of Nearu. Naila excelled at her lessons, and she had her favorites among her teachers. Mrs. Cansfield was a tall, white woman who taught scripture. She had a degree in history and had studied overseas, but was from a prominent local family. She was gentle and down to earth. She brought all the stories of the Bible to life, placing them in their historical context without postulation and dogma as often presented in church. All her analogies were everyday, timely, and culturally relevant, and her students loved her. She never scolded girls talking in class. She simply stopped teaching and waited until slowly it dawned on the culprits that the class was on hold because of them. Miss Henderson was Naila's art teacher, a thin, wiry Englishwoman with white hair and sensible shoes. She had a Mona Lisa smile as she strolled up and down the rustic art studio with its chicken wire partitions, commenting on this painting or that. A woman of middle age, she seemed stuck in time, neither aging nor trying to keep up with the latest hairstyles or attempt at makeup to fit into the modern world. Mrs. Spence taught music, rapping sternly on her lectern when girls tried to converse during music appreciation class. She was petite, slim, and very stern, but could break into a smile when pleased. A local woman with a penchant for fine music, she took Naila and her class through a curriculum of practical application of the rudiments of music. She held court on the stage at the Anstey House Music Hall, and Naila loved to sit quietly during her music appreciation classes and stare dreamily out of the rows of great double doors to the heat-induced haze hovering above the playing field in the afternoons as she listened to Mozart, Chopin, or Beethoven. There was Miss Rafto, who taught band and who had retired soon after Naila joined Bishop Anstey High School. Not long after her retirement, the school announced a plea for funds to help Miss Rafto purchase a ticket home to England, when it was discovered that she was reduced to selling pencils in front of Woolworths on Frederick Street to make ends meet. Naila had felt sad for her. England seemed so very far away, and an exile from home itself. Naila identified with her plight. What would await her in England? Naila wondered, as she remembered a poem from Blackie's Tropical Reader. Oh, England is a pleasant place for them that's rich and high, but England is a wicked place for such poor folk as I. So bishops bid a bad farewell to Miss Raftery once again and sent her to her fate. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. You said you recognize some of those teachers.
Yes, I worked with Mrs. Canfield. I had the privilege of working with her. We taught both scripture and comparative religion, in which I very much believe because we are a multiracial, multicultural, multi-religious society. And Mrs. Spence, of course, was there. He was vice principal when I went on. And Miss Henderson, too, was there, I remember, when I first went to Bishop's in 68 to supply for a term.
Well, 68 was the year that I left, so we just crossed paths.
Yes. And then I went back in 72, and they would have liked to get rid of me, but I stayed until 1998.
Good for you.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. That was a lovely read, and I'm sure from the participants I'm seeing here today that we have a few of these bishop girls, if I may call them that.
A
And I am
couple.
sure I see Helen is giving a thumbs up there,
Yes.
and I'm sure they must have been reminiscing and remembering of their times at Bishop.
Yes.
So thank you again, Cynthia, for that lovely read. And moving right along as we continue on Circe's dance, we will ask Harold Graves. Harold would be reading Circe's Dance, Part 3. Take it away, Harold.
He has
Harold,
to.
you need to mute. Harold, you need to unmute.
There we go. All right, thank you. Circe's Dance, Part 3 of 4. One day, a letter arrived for Lali from the First Lady of the island. It was an invitation to visit Port of Spain for a week on a working holiday to help design outfits for the First Lady's upcoming trip, where she was accompanying her husband Nazir to the Commonwealth Conference taking place in London, England later that year. There, they would meet the Queen at a general meeting of dignitaries at Buckingham Palace and attend the Royal Garden Party later in the same week. Lali was stunned. That would mean her handiwork would appear at Buckingham Palace. She rearranged her schedule to accommodate the First Lady's request. Lali's trip to Port of Spain was one of the highlights of her life. She was given a place to stay at Government House in the nation's capital. Built for royalty, the building was historically important as the Queen's residence while she was visiting Trinidad during its colonial past. Lali walked through the rooms where the Queen herself had stayed in 1966, had a dip in the pool where Princess Margaret relaxed on her first visit in 1955, and sat on the bench in the lush gardens where the Prince of Wales, later King Edward VIII, was photographed sitting on his visit to Trinidad in 1920. Lali spent mornings poring over designs and taking measurements for the First Lady's wardrobe. I feel you should wear a classic tailored suit for the first occasion. A streamlined, straight skirt with a slightly flared hip-length jacket with the timeless and elegant Coco Chanel look. I need to stop and speak something here. Chanel is spelled as it does in English Channel, but Chanel, Coco, is spelled Chanel and pronounced differently. So it's just for all writers, don't go with spell check when it comes to proper names, because even though they may spell them right, the name might be wrong. So I continue. The only nod to the tropics being the color, perhaps a vibrant orange or cool turquoise, with the only accent being a large silver brooch. A steel pan design with pan sticks elegantly crossed. Maybe Maharaj Brothers Jewelers can make specially one for you, said Lali. Oh, excellent, said the First Lady. You have such good ideas. Design the brooch, and I'll get Richie Maharaj to do it up for me. Lali, filled with confidence, became more assertive and took control. She said, you will have to wear hats. With this outfit, I will suggest the tarn style, worn slightly tilted at an angle, with a feathered accent in the same color as the suit. The monochromatic look is very dramatic and flattering to any sized figure. I will get my millinery department to create something suited to the shape of your face. Oh, Lali, you truly are a professional at what you do, said the First Lady. While mornings were all work, afternoons were given over to fun. Lali was feted and shown off at events like the dinner theater at the Hotel Normandy, staged by the Amateur Dramatic Society, the botanical show in the savannah where prized orchids grown by avid horticulturists were showcased, and tea at the Girl Scouts headquarters mounted as a fundraiser for travel to the upcoming jamboree in Germany. Lali was thrilled to be accompanying the First Lady as an associate. It was while attending a bazaar at Bishop Anstey High School that Lali reconnected with the memory of her long-lost friend Nyla. She wandered around the grounds, gazing at the buildings, remembering the stories Nyla had told her of her 4 years there. Lali sat on the little bench in the bougainvillea arbor. Nyla must have sat in this exact spot so many times over her years here. I wonder where she is now. How I would love to tell her I was here today. A wave of nostalgia and a tear appeared in her eye. The week flew by, filled with fittings and events. At the week's end, the First Lady said, Lali, this morning I have a reporter from the Trinidad Guardian newspaper coming to interview you. Interview me? Said Lali. Surely my trip here is not newsworthy. Of course, girl. It is a big thing, your designs reaching all the way to Buckingham Palace. Why not talk up the Lali originals? You know, this is a roundabout way of letting people know I'm going to meet the Queen of England. You must be aware how narrow-minded people in certain sections of the public are always saying, I'm such a show-off. Well, now, with the focus on you, they cannot blame me for boasting about going to meet the Queen, the First Lady said. Lali laughed. That's a good one. How clever of you to think of a sneaky way of announcing your royal adventure. Later the following week, a 2-page spread on Lali came out in the papers, complete with photos of her and the First Lady posing in the grounds in Government House. The headline read, Renowned Island Designers Clothing to Make It to Buckingham Palace. Vikram's mother and sisters were at the breakfast table when the newspaper arrived. Vikram's mother screamed, What? She make it to Port of Spain High Society and all these years I busted my arse to reach there? Man, you mean she one-up me? And her clothing going to Buckingham Palace too? No, 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 it cannot be. She tossed the paper aside, stormed out of the room, threw herself on her bed, and cried like a spoilt child out of sheer frustration and jealousy. Lali spent the next few months working night and day to get the specially designed wardrobe done for the First Lady's epic trip to England. At last, when it was done, she made a return trip to Port of Spain to oversee the final findings and conduct small adjustments. It was with a sense of complete accomplishment and relief that she relinquished the garments to the First Lady. That's it. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Harold. Very well read. Thank you.
Thank you, Harold. And, whenever Harold reads, it was an excellent read, but whenever Harold reads, we can see the actor and the dramatist that he was in earlier time. And I just say that he's still the actor and dramatist. So thank you again.
Thank you very much, Modi.
And one thing I want to say to Heather. Heather, I've been writing for quite a while, and most of the times I write about village life. But now that I'm reading Susie's Dance, and read some of the stories, and now I'm hearing them, I think I'm going to write about my high school days also. So thank you for that bit of, shall I say, inspiration.
Well, you see, we inspire each other, Mutila. Now I'm looking forward to reading your stuff.
Thank you, indeed. Okay, so moving right along, our next reader would be Alisa Janki, and Alisa would be reading Circe's Dance 4. Alisa, would you come in, please, and then we get some video. Okay, Alisa. Alisa, you're on. We're not hearing you. Alisa, would you like to try one more time? Okay. Okay, we seem to be not, Alisa seem not getting through, and I know that these pieces were meant to be read in sequence, but if we can't get Alisa, we'll just have to move along. So I would now like to ask Frank Mohan, and Frank would read one of my favorite pieces, The Bracelets. Take it away, Frank.
Okay, so this is the bracelets. The place was ancient India. The time was deep in antiquity during the era of the Mughal Empire in the reign of Shah Jahan. In those days, the vast plains at the foothills of the great Himalayas were dotted with villages, each tied to a local Nawab, who in turn owed his allegiance to the Mughal emperor. In an area between Jaipur and Agra, in a wealthy household, lived a young girl named Jumni, just 13 years old. She was bright-spirited with the fresh blush of girlhood. I like that metaphor. She was bright and spirited with the fresh blush of girlhood. She stood on the brink of womanhood in a society where customs and mores were tightly woven into daily life. Jumni was born into an aristocratic family, intent on maintaining the important network of political alliance and familial wealth with other dynastic families, using strategic marital ties as a means of keeping valuable relationships intact, maintaining power over the populace in their jurisdiction, and expanding their vast holdings. As a result, she was married at birth to a middle-aged acquaintance of her father, as was the custom in that era of divisive class distinctions within society. The young girl grew up having no say in the matter. But during her early childhood, Jumni was unaware of these intrigues that would color her life. She had a privileged childhood in many ways, yet cruel and restrictive in others. While her surroundings were luxurious with every physical comfort, she was treated no better than a servant for her parents and her 4 older brothers. She's used as a nursemaid to her siblings. She had to serve them at mealtimes, clean up after them, and fetch and carry for them like a lackey. Filled with a sense of outrage at her plight, she often protested at the injustice of her situation. Once her mother commanded, "Jumni, Spoon out some curry for your brothers. Well, why can't they spoon out their own curry? They have arms of their own, Jumni said. Shut up and do it as you're told, said her father, hitting the table with his fist that the bowl of curry spilled. Her mother blamed her for the spill, although she hadn't even touched the bowl. You see how you're wasting good food? Damn ungrateful child. I should send you to bed with no food, her mother said. Her feeble grandmother came to her defense. She's still a child, no need to be so harsh. She'll have to do for her family when she's in with her husband's household, so she might as well learn now. The old grandmother, who constantly sparred with her daughter-in-law, had to get the last word. There's time enough for that later. Let her enjoy her childhood now. Jumni's grandmother had brought her up, her own mother having nothing to do with her except for constant criticisms, frequent beatings, and the daily belittling of her only daughter. To many in the household, it seemed as if the girl's mother was jealous of her daughter, using every opportunity to boost her ego by making Jumni a scapegoat for all that went wrong in the household. If the father saw too much time with more attractive wife or concubine, as was the custom among men of his elevated status in society, or sought out charms of servant girls, the mother took out her repressed anger on her daughter, often accosting her with a stream of harsh insults. Used as a maid-in-waiting to her mother, Jumni had to apply kohl and rouge to her mother's face as she prepared for evenings out, enduring slaps and kicks in between application of makeup if her mother found fault with her technique. You can't do anything right. I wish you were never born, her mother said. Jumni learned at an early age not to respond. Any protest often resulted in harsher treatment, so she swallowed the insult and kept her feelings hidden. What's worse than a child without a mother? She wondered. A motherless child with a mother? Surely the future would recompense her for all her present suffering. Seen as a fool, Jumni was kept from any form of higher education. But she was a curious and intelligent girl, and a tomboy, having grown up with 4 male siblings, she pushed the boundaries of acceptable behavior for a submissive female of the times. While she had just a basic instruction in reading and writing, she was denied any further education in subjects like history or literature, of which was interest to her. She sought escape in the stories and poems of others, and even venturing into a writing life of her own, surreptitiously penning her own poetry in a notebook. She risked the anger of her family by spiriting away any notebook she could find to read at night. By her early teens, Jumni could read Sanskrit and speak Telugu, Urdu, and Hindi, which was picked up from the household's extensive staff of servants, handlers, and hangers-on. She even knew a smattering of English, gleaned from foreign guests who stayed at the house from time to time. How bitter indeed that, being female, she was excluded from higher education in subjects she had interest in, but which remained in the realm of males only. Once her mother caught her reading a volume of poetry by an obscure writer and cruelly remarked, I don't know why you're bothering to read that author. He is intelligent and you are not. Aloof, selfish, superficial, arrogant, and filled with exaggerated sense of their own importance, her parents completely ignored Germany. Like a fly on the wall, she was shooed away whenever she dared make her very parents like a fly on the wall, she was shooed away whenever she dared to make her very existence known. Like a piece of chattel, her feelings, thoughts, and desires were meaningless to them. As a girl, she was a commodity, nothing more. Wives, mistresses, and even some servants all ranked higher up in the hierarchy in the household, filled with intrigue, gossip, and scandal. In such a dung heap, the young girl was the delicate lily ready to be sacrificed. And that's my section.
Thank you so much, Frank. Thank you.
It flows beautifully. I very like some of the metaphors that you use. Cute.
Thank you, Frank. You know, that was beautifully read. And as Trini living in exile, just like our own Heather, you know, I think you really get the essence of the story. And I just want to say a bit, you know, that listening to that, and you know, I live in Pinal, you know, and I know a bit about Junie, and I will tell you, Junie turned out so very well. So thank you again, Frank. And as we move along, anybody want to make any comment about that last story that Frank read, or anything that we had done before? You know, for whenever I think about the bracelets, and I think I'm going to ask Heather to show us her hands. So there we see the bracelets, and if we had
Motila, you will read in the next section how much trouble I get into for sticking to these.
so you know, I am always, whenever she talk about the bracelets, and I always like to refer to Heather's hand. And right now I have a friend who is from Canada, and he says that he met Heather in Canada, and he was talking about the bracelets also.
Who's that?
So once again,
Motila?
thank you, Frank and Heather. Sorry for asking you to show us the bracelets, but I just couldn't help it.
Motila,
Okay,
who is
so
this
we
person? Who is this person that knew me?
this guy, his name is Daniel Ramnarayan, and his
Oh,
wife
that
is
one. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Baby, and they say that they spent quite a bit of time with your Auntie Margaret.
Yeah.
And what they especially about you was your bracelets.
Well, you know, Motilal, I must say this, I must interject a little bit here. The history of the bracelets with me. I started in Boston when the hippies used to make them on the sidewalks, and that was about the time I left Trinidad and came to the North America. And I started picking them up and wearing them the way that our ancestors did, but I was unaware of the historical significance of our ancestors and their bracelets. However, I think what made my parents angry about them was because it reminded them back of, you know, their indentured past when their grandmothers wore bracelets like that. And they were in such a hurry because they became Christian. They were in such a hurry to move into
Yes.
society, upwardly mobile, and leave all that behind. And I went back to it, and it was a reminder for them that they did not want. So I got to realize that later as I got older, but the time that it was happening, it was just a tug and pull of parent and child rebelling, you know, the child rebelling and the parents trying to have their way. So anyway, the story came out of that.
Yeah, just one thing I want to ask, you know, my grandmother had these set of silver bracelets on both hands. She also had on her feet. So I want to ask, you have any on your feet?
Well, Hannah, I had an ankle bracelet one time, just a little chain, and I was wearing it, and my mother came over to my house, and she took one look at it, and she said, "You mad or what?" And I was so embarrassed, I took it off. I never wore it again. So
Okay, I remember my grandmother used to have the silver bracelets on her feet also, so I just thought I would say that.
yeah,
Okay, thank you, Heather. I mean, that was just as interesting as anything that we had read before, so thank you for that, Tam.
thank
Moving
you.
along, do we have Sherry Sicharan here? Sherry, are you here?
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Motilal.
Good afternoon, Sherry. Long time. We have see
Yes,
you, girl. We are here, so that I don't know if you want to put on your video and would you read your piece now, please? Thank you. So, okay, we had Sherry, and Sherry, remind me what's the name of your piece today?
the bracelet, part two of two.
Wonderful, because I was wondering, I know the bracelet story, so I was wondering, hey, when I'm going to hear the rest of it. So, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have Sherry Sicharan, who is going to read the bracelets part two. Take it away, Sherry.
Good afternoon, everyone. The bracelet, part two of two. Junie looked at her great grandmother's Guanachese bracelet. It was the most treasured of her collection. This bracelet had made a long journey through history, beginning in the Mughal Empire, through the British Raj via indentureship, and new beginnings in the Caribbean, to this present time and place. Now she knew how to answer those who asked her why she wore so many bracelets. She marveled at the possibility that it belonged to someone named Jumani, a name not far removed from her own. What a coincidence. But then, what is the mystery that lied behind coincidences? The bracelet had come down 7 generations of the women in her family as they worked the fields in a harsh, arid village in India. It was a witness to history. It had seen the hardship of the crossing over the Kalapani, the bodies packed in the bowels of the ship, the human filth, the sicknesses, the death, the dead consigned to the deep. It had survived the burning cane fields in Trinidad, the smoke, the sweltering heat, the back-breaking work of the cane harvest, and the arduous transport of cane stalks to the sugar mills. It had seen Goshanie's eventual blindness, her final illness and death. It had lain in the dresser drawer for over a decade, its beauty shut out from the light. It had danced once more on the arm of Junie's aunt, and now here it was jostling along with other bracelets upon Junie's wrists. When Junie thought of Gonashi, the line from Maya Angelou's poem, I Rise, came to her mind. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. She vowed to make her life worthy of Jumani, the shadowy, tragic figure of the past, and Gonashi, her great-grandmother who suffered untold hardship on the sugar plantation to make a better life for her. This thought she found crystallized in the following lines from a poem entitled Indian Name by R.T. Janki, a renowned Trinidadian writer she had the privilege to know personally. I am the voice, silenced for far too long, the screams hardened into bone. I am the free spirit unbroken. I am the ship you sailed on, the land the gods left behind. I am the resurrection of new life. There is nothing they can do to me that has not been done before. I step out of your shadows into the light, a pioneer, a soldier, a warrior woman. Junie knew she had a physical connection to the woman of indentureship, but now she also felt a psychic link between her present life and the one that may have existed in a land far across the Kalapani. Now lost in the mist of time, denied any practical application to her artistic talents in her childhood, and in reference to the many hours spent hiding behind a book. Junie's artistic bent took the form of writing art, with words as her medium. In her attempt to explain her possession to herself, she put her feelings into poetry, addressing the concept of cellular memory so poignantly expressed in the lines. My earrings hang like spun lace from my earlobes. My bracelets weave their magic around my wrists. Their cheerful clings, perpetual music, rapping melodies around me. What vanity, you'll say, not knowing me really yet. What do you know? Do you know that such adamant often lies more deeply buried? Hello? Oh, sorry, I thought I lost connection. Than merely outward vanity. It's a reflection of a life bereft of what got left behind, a missing piece of the puzzle, lost when we were ripped away from all that was familiar. It comes from eons of jewelry wearing women across the waters, buried in our DNA and in our psyches. It comes from a time and a place so long ago and far away. It's like a fairy tale, yet generations hence, strange carving surface, and out of still waters a wave arises, a longing asserting itself, spreading out across a still pond, like concentric circles around my wrist, its droplets hanging from my ears, jewelry that much, much more than the mere gold it's made of.
Thank you very much for that reading.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sherry, for that wonderful read, and thank you, Heather, for writing that piece about honoring our ancestors. Indeed, that ancestor was a hero. But before Sherry, before you go, I just want to say something about Sherry. Sherry's a longtime member of Poetry and Prose, and Sherry, in her own right, is a hero. Just a few, maybe a week or so ago, there was a full page article about Sherry on one of our daily newspaper. You see, Sherry is an advocate for autism in Trinidad and Tobago. And there was this full page article where Sherry was celebrated in our papers for her work in advocating for autism and autistic children. So I want to say congratulations to you, Sherry, and it was so nice for you to come and share with us today readings, Heather work. So thank you, Sherry, and continue on doing the good work.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
bravo,
anybody want to
bravo,
add
bravo,
anything?
Terry. I was just thinking too, Modi, that this work today is a perfect month for it, because with Indian Arrival Day coming up, it just seems to fit perfectly.
Exactly. Well said, Harold. Yes, because this who, as I say, it so much reminds me because Hera and I grew up in the same village. So I can totally relate to Hera's writing and the people that she write about. Okay, so anybody okay, Sherry, no need. Sherry, you should be thanking you for gracing us with your presence today. Okay, so moving right along, our next reader would be Vilma Siusanka, and Vilma would be reading The Symmetry of Destiny. Come in, Vilma.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Yes, Vilma, good afternoon, and let me see a picture now.
You're not seeing that?
I
All right.
know,
So
Vilma.
this is a story of Port of Spain and Nova Scotia, Canada. Perched on the spot where the Roseway River meets the Great Atlantic, along the south shore of Nova Scotia, Canada, lies the small town of Shelburne. Firstly populated by French Acadians in the early 1700s, it became a bustling hub 80 years later when British loyalists fleeing the American Revolution settled there, touting it to be the new New York City of British North America. By the time my family left Trinidad to emigrate to its environs in the 1970s, Shelburne was filled with a few tired, faded remnants of its once glorious past. My family left Trinidad in September of 1970. My father, educator Ralph Laltu, had resigned his position as principal of the prestigious Queen's Royal College in Port of Spain to retrace his footsteps to the land from which his schoolboy mentors, the evangelists of the Canadian Presbyterian Mission, hailed, and where he had arrived in 1938 to attend Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, at their urging. It was his intention in 1970 to accompany my brothers and I as we embarked upon our own university careers. Thus, we went from the forward-looking, vibrant, and colorful, bustling seaport city of Port of Spain to the still dull, gray, small seaside town of Shelburne, where my father took a post teaching at the local high school. Here, he taught Shakespeare to the sons and daughters of fishermen for 11 years, sharing with them the wisdom of the bard and becoming one of their most memorable teachers, according to the school's yearbook entries. Our family rented a 100-year-old house once owned by a professor, Dr. Joseph McCarthy. Our landlady, Mrs. Nora Holcomb, was the elderly daughter of Professor McCarthy. She lived in Montreal, Quebec, where she was often visited by her widowed younger sister, Dorothy Mellor. They both made yearly trips to Shelburne to visit friends and to avail themselves of my parents' warm Trinidadian hospitality. A deep friendship developed between these ladies and my parents, with letters going back and forth in between visits. When Mrs. Holcomb did visit, she enjoyed sitting in the living room of the Shelburne house, filling my parents in on the history of the town and the house. Our family, the McCarthys, were a mixed race Negro loyalist family who came northwards into Canada with their white loyalist masters fleeing the American Revolution in the 1800s, she said. The family intermarried with the white population along the way, and the family made a name for themselves in shipbuilding. Although I studied at university in Montreal and married my husband, who was a professor there. We never did live in this house, but when we first married and after my father died, we thought of renovating it and putting it up for sale, she added. I am happy you've rented it now, as by coming here so frequently, I am able to reconnect with my McCarthy relatives. I hardly knew as I grew up in Montreal. Originally, slaves hailing from Eastern Africa somewhere in the long 400 history of slavery in North America, the blacks who accompanied white loyalists northwards were freed upon their arrival in Canada. The McCarthys were somewhat marginalized within the larger society, however, although they had blue eyes and light complexion. So they turned to the sea for their livelihood, taking advantage of Shelburne's natural deepwater harbor, one of a few such harbors in the world. The McCarthys made a name for themselves as shipwrights and sea captains, although into the third generation, the family excelled in the spheres of both entrepreneurship and academia. So my family, the Laltus of Trinidad, came to occupy the house filled with the remnants of other people's lives. There was antique furniture, which included an unusually high Victorian double bed that my parents called the Golan Heights in that Trini tongue-in-cheek humorous way. Chinese artifacts acquired from sea travels, old china wares, crystal vases, solid silver napkin rings and cutlery, handmade quilts, brass vessels, and amateur network from artist relatives all came together to create a home for our family. This was our first haven in a new country, far from the land of our births. The house was an 11-room structure of white clapboard. The gabled facade had a bow window and cheerful front door. The interior floors of hardwood creaked with age. The house was heated by electric baseboards and a huge cast iron wood stove that expelled more heat outdoors through its flue than retained indoors. Even in summer, the house was always cold. Any heat generated inside dissipated quickly, leaving us shivering to the core. Our water supply was delivered by pump from a well, which ran dangerously low in the summer periods of drought. My mother suffered homesickness and loneliness in the years we children were at university, and my father was at school all day. My mother often said of her first years in Shelburne, I cried enough tears to be able to fill up the whole well. Home from the university in the summer of 1972, when Mrs. Holcomb was visiting my parents, I came to know her briefly. She took the opportunity that summer to arrange for the Shelburne Heritage Museum to accept the gift of a rifle dating back to the American Revolution. The weapon had come to Canada with her loyalist ancestors and had hung on the living room wall ever since the house was built over 100 years earlier. Ralph, I would like you to drive me downtown to the museum, Mrs. Holcomb announced one morning. I think they would love to have this piece of loyalist history permanently in their display. Truly an amazing item of history, my father said, while whispering aside to my mother, how I would like to have that for myself. Don't be stupid, Ralph, my mother said. What would you do with that old thing? It will be just more clutter for us. My mother had little regard for history. The next expedition on that visit was to be to the local cemetery just off the main road into town, across from the high school. I accompanied my parents, Mr. and Mrs. Holcomb, through the town from the house one afternoon, where Mrs. Holcomb wanted to seek out the graves of some of her relatives. My father tried in his way to be accommodating. Let me take a photo of you in front of that relative's grave, he said, hoping it would be a treasured souvenir of her trip for both our family and for Mrs. Holcomb. She blanched. It is bad luck to photograph the living in front of a gravestone. It means death will come to the one standing by the grave. We had never heard that local superstition. Nonsense, my father said, and they both laughed, recognizing that as highly educated people, it was silly to believe in superstitions. Photos were taken, and the incident was soon forgotten. That visit was a triumph, and the life carried on as usual. Then, a few months later, on December 30th, 1972, we received a phone call from Dorothy Mehla. Mrs. Holcomb had passed away. The end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vilma. Thank you. That brings back the early days of me first coming to Canada. Hadn't heard it for a while.
Yeah, thank you, Vilma. That was a lovely read. And in the earlier part, when Heather was talking about the earlier the missionaries and going back to Canada and the missionaries who came here and started a Presbyterian school. Just 2 days ago, I was in the Diwali Nagar again, as I said, is Indian Heritage Month, and I was there to launch Museum on a tea shop at the Diwali Nagar, and one of the speakers there was talking about the Presbyterian influence on educating the East Indians in Trinidad. And my first school was the Pinal Rock CM School. We used to call it the Canadian Mission School. And I know that Vishnu must have gone to a CM school. I think RT went to a CM school and later to a Muslim school. Frank himself was educated at one of the Presbyterian schools. So in this month of Indian Heritage Month, I think it's fitting that we should acknowledge the work that what we used to call the Canadian Mission and the Presbyterian did in providing education to the East Indians. Later on, we had the Hindu Mahasabha who took up the mantle, but essentially my parents and my grandparents to a little extent, but my parents in particular only learned to read because of my father used to go to the Pinal Rock CM school and my mother went to the DB Presbyterian school. So just as a side, I want to acknowledge that the work that people like Heather's father and grandfather did in providing education to us rural Indians. Thank you.
Just to add to what Moti was saying, I wonder how many people remember that the abbreviation CM school, originally it was CMI school, Canadian Mission to the Indians. That was the original.
Oh, okay. Yes, thanks for that, Frank. Well, you're just a little bit older than me, but in my time, we knew it as Canadian Mission only. But thanks for that. I would have to keep that in mind. Okay, Vish, you want to add something there? Sure, you went to a CM school. Okay, so
No, I would repeat what you were saying. That
yeah. Okay, Vichu, can you repeat, please?
I said I was going to say about the same thing he was saying. Canadian Mission Indian School, and then it became the Presbyterian School. The CM School, CMI, CM School, Presbyterian School, same thing.
Okay,
And they were
and
most
even
like in
now,
the
rural
areas.
We have somebody, especially in South, somebody's what the Presbyterian school. We have the Grand Presbyterian School, which is one of the most sought after school for people who write in what we call the SCA now. But that is a topic for another time. Okay, so we have I think we have exhausted our list of readers. But
Except that I'm going to do a final reading, and it continues to this story about the house in Shelburne where we moved. As I was telling you guys earlier, but probably before most of the people joined, that this house that we came to, Mrs. Holcomb's house, we didn't realize it at the time. We didn't realize it until 2017 after my mother died, that the person that lived in that house 70 years earlier had gone to Trinidad. And his name was W.H. McCarthy. And he worked in the Trinidad Petroleum Company. And his uncle was a very famous and well-known person of merit in Trinidad, John McCarthy. They all came from Shelburne. They were shipbuilders and sea captains, as the story says. But what we didn't know was because they had traveled to the Caribbean, bringing salt fish, salt cod from Canada, and then they would pick up oranges and fruit and so on, bring it back to the Maritimes. But in their travels, they found that Trinidad was a good place to live and to do business because they were partly Negro, they were not treated well in their home country of Canada. So they chose to live in Trinidad, and they became very wealthy. And the uncle, John McCarthy, he provided the funds that built the Victoria Institute of Art in Port of Spain, right across from Holy Name Convent from Memorial Park. So some of the funds that he contributed went into the building of that. So in effect, it's part of Trinidad history as well as the family story. But what is strange about this whole story, this coincidence, is that unbeknownst to us, we ended up living in this house, and they ended up living in Trinidad. So we traded places. We kind of crossed paths, but even though 70 years apart, and we didn't really know each other. And the final part of this book is an ode to George McCarthy, the young artist. He had painted a scene that he left in the house in Shelburne. And after Mrs. Holcomb died, my parents were given permission to take everything from the house when they moved to New Brunswick. And they brought this painting with them. And when my mother died in 2017, when we lived in Nova Scotia, the internet was not in existence yet. By the time my mother died in 2017, we used the internet to look up the signature of the artist, and then we found out that he had gone to Trinidad to live, and he had died there in 1906. And it was just amazing that, of all the places in the world that they could have sailed to, that they chose Trinidad to live. Anyway, I wrote this poem to this artist. We traded countries, you and I, though some 70 years apart. You sailed to my tropical paradise, and I made the trip in the opposite direction to spend a snowy Christmas in your hometown, where I came to know the cold, salt air at Sandy Point and the blackberry bushes growing at the end of the garden. I walked along the faded glory of tired buildings along the harbor, their prime past. And you, did the Pui's blossoms blanketing the savannah give rise to the memories of a northern autumn, the gold leaves carpeting the forest floor? Or did the musical beat of a tropical rainstorm on the tin roof awaken you the memory of slick sleet pelleting the window pane on a cold north storm? We never knew each other, you and I, but we linked across time, our lives destined to overlap. By your art, that painting that you left behind hanging on the wall in Shelburne, in a house you surely knew, where we would come to live and where it would hang for 100 years before its journey to spend another 40 plus years, ignobly adorning the wall of the garage, Briarwood. Here it saw the daily comings and goings of my family, until that day my mother left for good. My mother, for whom we waited daily beside the Royal Victoria Institute of Art, then, unbeknownst to us, funded by your family in sunny Port of Spain, your adopted city, in whose bosom you now lie, ensconced forever in a faraway land, removed from the childhood haunts along the Roseway. What strange alchemy divines our fates, that I should occupy a house you knew, and that you should breathe the fragrant air of a place we knew so well in Trinidad. The end. Life is strange, and in all our lives, we probably do have coincidences that take place. Sometimes we notice them, and sometimes we don't, in the hustle and bustle of everyday lives. And my parents never knew of this. They died before we discovered this. So this is really a strange happening. So I had to
Heather.
record it.
That was inspiring, and if I may say so, I think that you're just as good a poet as you are a writer.
Thank you very much. I have a big volume of poetry too.
Okay. Alisa seems to have worked out her difficulties um, with her uh, sound and picture. So we're going to ask Alisa. Alisa, can you read your piece now? Come in, Alisa. Alisa Janki, are you hearing me? Lisa, can you hear me? Okay, Alisa, can you read now? Can you just test your microphone and read?
She tested it before she said, but
Okay, well, we're still not hearing Alisa, and you know, Butilal, anytime you get a chance, you want to read more than they allocate to him. So before we end, I'd like to just read this piece from Heather's book again.
oh, by the way,
Circe's
I
dance.
must tell everybody that I just wanted to know that the image on the front cover is myself at the age of 25.
You haven't changed much.
Boy, that flattery will get you everywhere.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to read a short piece. Circe's dance, the prologue. And it goes like this. There is a divinity that shape our ends. Rough hew them how we will. And it's from Shakespeare's Hamlet, Act 5, Scene 2. At the turn of the century in rural Trinidad, superstitions abounded. Local people believed if innocent creatures inhabited the dense undergrowth on the worn footpaths and forested areas on the edge of the country villages. There was a Sukuya, a blood-sucking vampire in the form of an old shape-shifting woman who flew through the skies in the shape of a fireball, and the light Diabless, a beautiful cloven-foot woman known for spiriting men away to their deaths. These entities were feared by young and old alike, and any old recluse or misshapen human being was suspected of dealings with these otherworldly demons of the night. Only the tomfoolery or drunken individual ventured out after dark, since an encounter with either the Sukuya or the La Diables could prove disastrous. In those days, in the seaside village of Pleasance in Mayaro country, lived an old crow named Circe. She came by her name through the suggestion of a pretentious schoolmaster who had a penchant for the Odyssey by the ancient Greek writer Homer, whose enchantress Circe tried to prevent Odysseus and his men from return home. Born with a clubfoot, contemporary Circe was relegated to the edges of society where she lived a solitary life of pain and struggle. Now, in her 80s, she lived in a ramshackle hovel surrounded by an overgrowth of bushes and tangled vines. Not able to wear shoes on her clubfoot, she bandaged it up in layers of soilcloth, adding to the local belief that she was La Diablesse. Circe walked with an unsteady gait, giving her the appearance of dancing when she ambled down the country paths surrounding the village. When the local villagers caught a glimpse of Circe on the edges of the village, they remarked, "Look, man, is Circe with she crazy dance coming?" Late one evening, as the sun was a red smear on the horizon, Circe was returning to the village from a walk along the bridge in an unsuccessful search for blue back crabs for a meal. She felt tired and faint. She encountered two village fishermen pulling their pirogue up to the shore. They had spent the entire day fishing, and they too had caught nothing. They carried with them an earthenware jug with fresh water for drinking on the long, hot day plying the waters of the great Atlantic as they searched for fish. Exhausted and hungry, they were startled by the sudden appearance of Circe in a grove of coconut palms on the bridge. "Excuse me, misters, could you give me a drink of water from your jug, please?" Circe asked with labored breath. Go away, you old crone, one man said. But the other poured water in a tin cup and gave her a drink, smiling indulgently. Come, Mama, have all the water you want. Circe drank long and hard and refreshed. She looked at each man in the eye. To the man who gave her the water, she said, Bless you, mister. You and your family will live well and stay here forever and thrive. And to the man who reacted with disgust, she uttered a curse. As for you, be damned. Your family will disappear from the village. They will go far, far away and never come back to live here. And with that, she vanished into a thicket of coconut palm trees near the water's edge, dragging her club foot behind her in her dancing way. Within 6 months, the cursed man drowned on a fishing expedition, leaving behind a wife and a young son named Ram. A drowned fisherman is not an unusual occurrence in fishing villages on the shores of an ocean as unpredictable as the Atlantic, and no one gave a second thought to the old crone's words, spoken in anger. Many people thought of Circe as a fool, a physical impediment translated by the country folks as indicative of mental deficiencies as well. But in the drowned man's immediate family, the tale of Circe's encounter with a fisherman relative survived, shrouded in mystery, dulled by time, and shoved to the edge of awareness, yet brought out and marveled from time to time on these languid evenings when stories were told around the pitch oil lamp as dust settled at the close of the day. By the mid 1950s in Trinidad, belief in these superstitions began to fade. A rapidly mobile society, Trinidadians strove for education, and a new awareness pushed back to the boundaries of myth and legend. Commerce, industry, and the Christian faith did much to focus people's attention on improving their lot in life, and stories of the Sukuya and the Ladables were just that, stories. In the land of the black arts of Obia, reason, however, prevailed, and Circe, long dead, and the words she uttered that day, so long ago, were lost in the distance of time. Thank you. I just want to make one comment, as Heather was writing about how the people would mock Circe and all that. And it's something that they say what is joke for little boys is death for crapo. And I remember the little boy growing up. There was this lady. She had one eye, and they used to call her Kani. I think Vishnu would tell us that Kani means that you're blind or something. And we used to call her Kani, and we used to tease her as she was. We said that she was a Sukuya, and we used to tease and mock her. And sometimes we even used to pelt little stones at her. And now that I'm grown up and I read this, um, Heather, I am remembering that, and I am remembering with regret. I wish I could turn back time. So thank you, everybody, for allowing me to indulge in that last one story. You know I just say, boy, when you see a mic, you just can't hold back. So thanks again. And we still have some time. No, we have
Hi,
some.
Motilal. Could you hear me now?
Now
Yes,
we're
we hear
hearing
you
you.
now, Alisa.
Yeah,
So
could you
you
hear
go
me
right
now?
ahead.
Okay,
Yes, we
thank
are.
you. I apologize for the earlier hiccup. So this is Circe's Dance, part 4 of 4, and here goes. Many an afternoon, in the stillness of that sunny spot, her armchair occupied, flashes of Port of Spain would invade her thoughts, and she would think, right now, at this very hour, the sun would be hot over the savannah, the breezes soft and caressing, and despite the noise of the city sounds, A stillness would envelop the city wrapped in the haze of midday heat. She could see it, she could smell it, and she knew it to be an absolute truth. It was a truth that rang truer than anything in her present life. Nyla could see in her mind's eye the elegant pui in flower, the roti and coconut vendors round the savannah, the schoolboys clad in blue shirts gathering on the walkway across from Queen's Royal College, and the elegant buildings of yesteryear lining the west side of the 200 acres of the city center that is Queen's Park, Savannah. Often, Nyla's thoughts went back to her days at Bishop's, wandering freely through the classrooms she had occupied and passages she had known as a timid young schoolgirl. She still wondered about her friends. She had lost touch with everyone she had known. The advent of the internet opened up new worlds to her, however, and through the magic of social media, she was able to reconnect with some of her classmates, many of whom spanned the globe, now residing in such far-flung places as Washington State, Colorado, and Connecticut in the US, the Netherlands, England, and Canada, as well as those who remained in Trinidad. Cyberspace also opened up images of bishops and the changes it had undergone over the years in the name of progress. Photos of the school grounds now showed new buildings, which now occupied spaces where majestic trees once stood, and even Anstey House was now gone, replaced by a brand new structure. It was only in the odd spaces, the occasional garden hedge, that the old bishops came through to awake nostalgic stirrings deep in Nyla's soul. Speak, memory, she would whisper, echoing the title of Nabokov's famous tomb. In many ways, Meyaru, too, still haunted Nyla. It was like a scab covering the top of a wound, growing deeper with passing years, never really healing. One late afternoon, she was viewing scenes of Trinidad on the newly introduced social media forum of YouTube. She happened upon scenes of Manzanilla and Meyaru. She viewed a drive through the Kokal, the sun directly overhead on the water, turning it into a steely gray, the waves flowing in like sheets of molten metal, washing gracefully over the sands, the vastness of the sand, sea, and sky, bordered by the trees rising majestically from roots hidden by fallen palm fronds and coconut shells. She recognized the Nariva estuary with a brand new bridge, bringing back memories of the rickety wooden one that rattled when the car crossed the slats. Here, by the stump of an old concrete standpipe, was where young boys used to stand selling bunches of blue crabs on strings, and there was the Bovel Coconut Plantation headquarters, where her father had worked when she was little, the smell of copra pervading the air. Nyla felt as if her heart would break. Watching this video, I feel like a stranger in a familiar land. She just wanted to go home, 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 home became her mantra, not unlike Chekhov's heroine of the Three Sisters, whose own mantra, Moscow, 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 spoke of a place that exists in memory only. If Nyla returned home, what would she face? She could never regain the rhythm and tempo of the life she had left behind. Canada had seen to that as much as the changes back in Trinidad. It was with great sadness that she realized, as unhappy as she was in Canada, she had been changed so much by her present environment that she had lost the key to fit the home that Trinidad once was. Nyla put her thoughts into poetry. Home, distant thunder, dark clouds on the horizon. An uncanny stillness envelops the thirsty land, microscopic life languishing, mouths wide open, eyes lifted to the sky, watching for clouds, waiting for rains, rains that never come. Life doomed, and I caught in this arid desert, my soul aching, aching with a pain so palpable. It floats before my eyes dulled with longing, longing for my own rain, for quenching, for home. The pain, the more acute, being filled with the knowledge that I, like Odysseus, being away from home so long, excuse, caught in the grip of some evil source, that I, if I ever found that place called home, I would come to it like a being from another world, and the places once loved would greet me like an outsider, and I would see, excuse, all that I, all had that had been once familiar through the eyes of a stranger. And that was Cirque's Dance Part 4 of 4. Thank you very much, and this very beautiful. And as I read the nostalgia that Nyla is going through, it sort of reminds me of some of my own thoughts. When you return to somewhere that you didn't see in a while, and you see all the changes, you feel a kind of nostalgia, and it's like, well, how do I fit in here? So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alyssa. I'm just moved to tears by your reading.
Oh, thank you. It's very nostalgic and a very, very emotional piece.
Well, I'm
Okay,
glad you were
thank
able
you
to bring it
again,
to us.
Lisa. Sometimes they say
You're
that we have
welcome.
to exercise patience and wait so that we can get the good fruits. My grandmother used to say, boy, take your time, wait for the mango to ripe and then pick it. So although you had a little difficulty in getting on earlier, I think that it was well worth the wait. Now, before we close,
Thank you.
we have some of, I'm sure we have some of people here who were Heather's schoolmate. And there, I think we have a Alana, we have a Helen, there's a Joan here, Joan Braffett. So I would like to invite these newer people who I suspect were schoolmates of friends of Heather to share their thoughts with us, please. Let me call Alana first. Alana, are you there? Would you like to share something with us?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm actually not at a schoolmate. I'm on invitation of Cynthia, and I usually come ever so often to listen to the amazing poetry here. I just have to say I thoroughly enjoyed the readings today, and this is indeed a wonderful work. And I'll be finding out how I can get a copy of it because I look forward to reading it. Some of the I'm originally from Guyana, and when in some of the parts of reading some of the parts, the similarities between. So, for example, I think the first reading we're describing the scene at the shop, and so, it could have been in Guyana. I mean, with in the sense that a lot of the characters and the things and so were familiar. So I really enjoyed, and I'm now homesick, even though I was home just a few weeks ago. Thank you. And
Alana, this is Heather. Alana, the publisher that helped me through with this work is Guyanese also. Even though
oh,
he lives in,
wow.
yeah, even though he lives in Canada now, he's a writer and a publisher, and he helped both Frank and myself with our books. And he's
Yeah.
Ken Puttycombe from Guyana. So
Okay, see, small world.
yeah.
Excuse me, sorry, I have a bit of a cold. Keep up the
Okay,
good work.
Heather, be
thank you,
sure that
Alana, and forgive me for not recognizing you. And I see Helen is back here. So Helen, would you like to share something? Would you your thoughts about what transpired here today? And I don't know if you was if you were a schoolmate of Heather. So if you know any secrets that she don't want us to know, this is the time to spill
Well,
the
she
beans.
bribed me not to say anything. Thank you so much. This is a wonderful group, and I have enjoyed checking in on not enough occasions, but I'm happy to see your announcements on Facebook from time to time. I always attend if I can. I was really sorry I couldn't be there for the Mud House thing, which I don't know if that's already. That sounded most fun. So Heather and I were, yes, schoolmates at Bishop Anstey High School, where Cynthia taught, but I think Cynthia remembers me, she says, and I was at Bishop's. I did O levels in '69 and A levels in '71. So I was there for at least part of the time that Cynthia was there. And so I really enjoyed Heather's stories. We've been back in touch for a number of years on Facebook and talking about writing and our challenges with that. I'm working on very, very slowly on a memoir about my experiences growing up in Trinidad. I was born in South. I was born in San Fernando. And then we moved up to Port of Spain when I was a child. And my focus is, being biracial, having an English mother during the first 9 years of my life was pre-independence. And then the next 9 years before I left, 10 years before I left Trinidad to go away to university was post-independence. So it's an interesting divide. And one of my writing group members, now deceased, said to me, I think your book is about not belonging. So there's a lot of exploration of that. It's a very different story. And I think all of us from Trinidad and Tobago, it feels as if with so much diversity, we all have different stories. Circling back to Heather, she totally beat me to it in terms of getting into print. And I love the stories. As everyone has commented on, the detail, it just you feel you can hear the characters, you can see what's going on. And I love the exploration of history and the strange threads of history, both in the bracelet story and then also in the story about the very last one, which sadly I missed part of it. The story about how sorry, I just lost my thread. The bracelet story, the Nova Scotia story. That the strangeness of that, the Canadian missions and the story behind their coming to Trinidad and then coming full circle to go back to Canada. I think that one of the things I think about a lot is that there's, unfortunately, time passes. And as we all know who study history, the way history is told changes with time. And we're seeing that in all countries, wherever we live now, we can see stories are being retold. As they say, it's told by the victors, right? So what we may have learned from Mrs. Gansfield at Bishop's may be very, very different from something a child in Trinidad will learn today about the same period of time. It's not wrong. Hopefully, it gives us greater perspective. But I think what we will find is that individual memoirs, or what do they call it? Auto memoir, something, there's this, the blending of autobiography and memoir. But excuse me, the blending of fiction and memoir, right? That you have personal experiences that drive your stories. I feel that writing may be some of the most truthful, because people are telling their personal experiences. People are not trying to condense the experiences of a million people and make it into a single monolithic experience. It's a kaleidoscope. And, Trinidad society is a kaleidoscope. And the writing of people like Heather is showing some little bit colored, little pieces of color. And maybe I have one or two pieces to add, and everyone on this talk has pieces to add.
Very
Yeah,
well said, Helen. Very well said. Thank you.
That's very true.
Thank you,
Because
Helen. I hope that you continue to join us, and whenever you feel comfortable and to share some of your writings with us, we'll be happy to feature you here. I
That's
was
so
hoping
kind.
to hear a little bit of salacious gossip, but
I know you were, yeah, but she threatened me. She
And
threatened
well,
me, is what she did. She said she'd ban me if I told about some of the stuff. No.
actually,
Okay.
there is some
Thank
stuff.
you. Well, we little past our closing time,
I
but
think
one thing I
Harold
want
wanted
to
to
say
say
to
something. Harold
was
wanted to
that
say something.
well, I
Harold
just
wanted.
wanted, I just want,
want to say that Joan said in the chat, thank you. Cynthia invited her to sit and listen. And though she's not a poet, she really enjoyed it this afternoon. So Heather, you're getting compliments all around. Do you want to say where we can buy the book?
Just before Heather speaks, I just want to add that Joan Brathwaite is Kamal Brathwaite's sister.
all right?
well, Heather,
She's a
Heather,
librarian.
We have to thank Heather. I'm sorry, we have to thank Cynthia. Cynthia always inviting people to our sessions, and she has been helping to grow poetry and prose. So Cynthia,
You're
thank
very
you for
welcome.
all your efforts.
It's worthwhile.
Really,
I think Harold was trying to say something, Motilal.
yeah, I just have made a couple of questions. First of all, Heather, I really appreciate and enjoy what I've heard from your book. I think it's very fine. I do want to remind you to be sure. I don't know how you managed to get your book published. I know mine on Amazon. If I have an error in the book, I can republish really immediately because Amazon is not a publisher; it's a printer.
Yeah.
Right, prints the books. But you need to fix Coco's name.
Yes.
CHANEL. That's very important. But yes, it's a wonderful book. And as your friend said, in my case, my auto memoir takes place here in Trinidad and in the United States, and then back in Trinidad again. So all of us have these very unique stories to tell. And I'm so pleased to know that all of us are telling them, and hopefully people will read. It's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you for Harold. Yes, I can go into a reprint, a second edition.
Great.
Yeah, with the corrections. Yeah. They always miss something. As you say, the autocorrect is terrible.
I know, it's crazy.
Well, I do want to thank Arity for the introduction and all the work she put into bringing this to fruition. We worked together along the way. Arity, thank you so much for popping in. I'm not sure if she's still here or not.
She was in, and
But
I think she got back out.
yeah, it could be. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I've been humbled really by all the comments and attention, and gives me the impetus to keep moving on and doing more great things.
Thank you, Heather, and indeed we look forward to you doing more great things. Okay, so I want to invite Gersha to for closing comments and closing the meeting. Heather, you there? I'm sorry, Gersha, you there?
Hi, I'm here. Thank you,
Okay,
everyone
so
that read today. And well, thank you so much for sharing. Heather, it was a pleasure to have you as our author of the month. I actually have 2 copies of your books. One that you would have sent to me signed, and one that I got on Amazon. So thank you so much for the signed copy.
I'll
And
send some more down by Motilal. Motilal, I'll send you some that you can give the head
yes,
of
yes,
Nalis.
yes,
yeah,
yes. I'll bring out at least about 2 or 3
we
because
gave
afterwards wait, eh?
Yeah,
My wife
yeah.
going to shop.
we gave one
Exactly.
to JB Library has one as well, because we gave them one on
Yes,
our launch.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so
But thank you everyone that read as well. And Heather, I can't wait to completely read your book. Right now I'm reading your book and I'm reading Ayana's book at the same time.
Mhm.
I hope everyone is
okay.
reading. We were reading Ayana's book for our book club, so I don't know where everyone is at that. But Heather, I really want to commend you on this piece of work. It's really, really well written.
Thank you very much, Gershan. Thank you to all. And
Okay,
we'll
so
see you
I'm going
next
to stop
time.
recording and anybody could stay and chat for a little while. I can't stay for too long, but I'm going to stop the recording now.
Musila, I'll stop live as well. You see the little YouTube? Click on it and see if you could stop it.
Which part are they, girl?
At the top right where you...
The green thing?
Yeah, right next to the green thing, you'll see YouTube.
I've seen something more than I don't know.
All right, let me grab back hosting from you then.
Yes, you better do that.